This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Talk about stepping up. Bang! Bang!
It's time to level up your game. Introducing the all-new ESPN app. All of ESPN, all in one place. Your home for the most live sports and the best championship moments.
The electricity is palpable.
Step up your game with no annual contract required. It's the ultimate fan experience. Level up for more on the ESPN app or at stream.espn.com. Sign up now.
This is Rob Gronkowski from Dudes on Dudes. Applebee's just cooked up the ultimate option play with their new Ultimate Trio deal. You can choose from 3 of their delicious appetizers and pair them up with 3 sauces for just $14.99. Craft your perfect trio from over 80,000 different combinations in this flavor-packed plate built for one, or to share if you're generous. You can stick with the classic pairings like boneless wings and buffalo sauce, or you can spice things up and try some unexpected pairings like dipping chicken wonton tacos in our honey Dijon mustard. It's time to head to your neighborhood Applebee's or order online today. Now that's eating good in the neighborhood.
All right, back at headquarters in St. Louis Park, Barrero and Guardsy with you until 6:30 this evening. Bottom of the hour, we will chat with former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson, who's been on this show, of course, for years. In fact, previously we had set up an appearance at the State Fair on Sunday, which I think we will still follow through with. Blair has stopped by there the last several years at the fair. And we figured, for the obvious reasons, that we should get some quick reaction from him today. He is scheduled for 3:30 this afternoon. Lou Ragoose, among the many local news operatives working on this story, he, of course, works for KARE 11, is going to join us at some point. That's a little fluid.
Yes, still.
But we'll eventually get him on when it works for him, obviously, on a very busy day. Ragoose will be part of the conversation as well. We will eventually, well, I'll just leave it at that for now. We may add some other guests before this thing is done, because we've got certainly a lot of calls out at this point, and so that is a very fluid situation as well. But we will leave it there right now. The Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open, 646-86. We now have the alleged shooter identified as Robin Westman, formerly Robert Westman. The court records indicating that Westman's mother, Mary Grace Westman, submitted a petition to change her child's name in November of 2019. A judge grants the petition in January 2020. And wrote in an order making the name change official. Minor child identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification, at which point Robert becomes Robin Westman. At the time, Westman was 17 years old. You heard, if you were listening to the chief, the press conference, that there is this will shock probably no one at this point. There's shorthand. It feels like there's a working shorthand with these stories. Not always true, but often true. That you can go with the shorthand. In this case, there was a manifesto. There's video that I think you've seen more of than I have, Guardsy, with a number of disgusting comments, images, etc. A lot of firepower also laid out. Is that correct?
Firepower, a book with drawings, plans, the whole bit. I tried not to watch it because the video that's circulating is pretty lengthy.
Correct.
And if it's accurate, and that's actually what it's portraying, it's very chilling.
Yes, because somebody had already texted that, we need to expose the shooter's real motivation instead of protecting it. I don't disagree. I think most of us agree. I think it's too early to know. I don't think that's an attempt to protect whatever that motivation might be. It almost sounds trite to say, if you do what he or what she did, it's almost as if that alone, regardless of the circumstances surrounding it, is sick enough, right? But I almost feel like there is another layer to this, another level to this. One, because it's school children. Two, because they're praying. Three, because, according to several reports, I believe including from the chief earlier today, Chief O'Hara, at least one or two of the doors were barricaded, presumably again by the shooter, to limit the possibility of someone escaping what this sick bleep did, which was to shoot through the windows, the church windows, at individuals who are already either in there praying or were on their way in as well. Basically, you're celebrating also the beginning of school, of another school year, as I understand it. And the level of delusion about whatever you think you're championing, to think that somehow you're championing it in a way by conducting yourself the way you did. Again, any way you kill is heinous. But the circumstances, as they're laid out to us at this point, I mean, it's so depraved, it almost is, I think, it's beyond words. And by the way, sick, horrific, depraved, irredeemable individual, not because of the transgender transition, but because of the behavior, what the individual did in this particular occasion to traumatize, I'm sure, an entire, certainly an entire metropolitan area, but that particular location in particular, children who thankfully are going to survive, most of them at least, but who are only beginning to completely grasp and understand what the mountain they have to climb to just sort of get back to what might be classified as some measure of normalcy. I think this took place at about 8:30 this morning, or it started about 8:30 this morning.
Yep, just before 8:30. Yep.
Information. And that's where we are with it. It's I'm sure I'll end up looking. Well, I think a lot of, like, the YouTube stuff gets taken down, right?
Yeah.
I think it's down now at this point. I assume it can be, there are people who know how to archive that kind of thing. There was anti-Semitic filth. There was one of the reports indicated that there was some anti-Trump there. It almost looked to me like there was some pro-Palestinian stuff. Who knows what actually would motivate someone? And I'll ask again, sacrificing children, praying in a church or at a church, at a school. Add it up. Where does that get you to wherever you think you're going to go? And the other thing I'm starting to despise, we got this with the Hortman assassin. The text we get later, he left messages for his family about how bad he feels for them, and I know they won't even understand. It's just, don't bother. There has to be clearly a level of delusion and sickness, but there's also a level of self-imposed martyrdom here, that you're special. I'm special. I'm doing something special. And not all mass killers are alike, but I do think many of them share some of the same, if you want to use the word, qualities, I would say deficiencies. And to a large extent, it's this ability to, in your delusion, to elevate yourself to some kind of a place where you think you're making some sort of profound statement. And you're just sick. You're pathetic. And as I mentioned, the number of individuals, once again, who are left traumatized by this, endless, certainly around the school. We said this before when there have been previous incidents involving children. any mass shooting is bad, whether it's involving adults or children, right? But I think we all, whether we have children or not, there's a softer spot for a kid who doesn't even really know barely he or she knows they're alive.
Has nothing to do with anything.
Just starting to figure out what the hell this world is. In this case, by the way, they're also going to school, the place that we are supposed to associate with what? Innocence, learning, socializing, just figuring this whole stupid thing out. And in this case, beyond that, praying, literally, in many cases. And it also elevates the story above and beyond. Now, the chief would not confirm what a couple media outlets have written, that the mother, the aforementioned mother, previously did work at the location where this took place. I thought I'd read in a couple of the reports or heard that she had retired from her job, I believe, as a secretary several years ago. And there's at least one media outlet, maybe more, you can tell me, who has said that the shooter did at one point or another go to school here as well. Have you read that or heard that?
I hadn't read that. The mother part has been circulated pretty widely. I had not heard that he may have gone to school there.
Right. Well, I'm sure there will be more information coming on that because, and that, I get it from a journalistic standpoint, even a human standpoint. You're going, well, why? Okay, what's the connect? What do you, as if it matters in a sense. That in itself is the sick place we've gone to where, well, I'm kind of curious, not that I would defend it no matter what, but I'm kind of curious to know what would prompt you to go to this level. Obviously plan it very carefully, a lot of firepower, brought, I think the chief said at least 3 weapons on this occasion. And you got videos indicating that the perpetrator knew exactly what she intended to do. And of course, the answer is there is no explanation. And yet that's sort of what we're left with because we're so horrified and so stunned that anybody would be capable of taking this kind of step with these sorts of individuals. It was horrendous when it was a political assassination. It almost takes on, in this condition, something else, because these weren't elected officials. These weren't politicians. They were just a bunch of kids starting out a new school year, excited about what they have. And now 2 of them are gone. Gone. Not to mention what that does to the families around them. And as I said, the other children who were there. And again, it appears the good news is, if there can be any good news out of this tragedy, is that the rest of the wounded are all going to survive, according to the chief. And I believe they are already released, which surprised me a little bit because I thought there were stories that there were 2 in critical condition. But as we know, in real time, the stories get mixed up. Maybe even the police chief does not have all the information as well. Sadly, at times like these, among others, we check in with our good friend Blair Anderson, former St. Cloud police chief, has been in law enforcement forever. He is now retired. And he's a go-to guy at a time like this to find out how he's reacting, what we can learn from it. Everybody's looking for okay, what are we going to do now? What can we do what's the magic wand that we can wield that can take this away or lessen the possibility that we have to mess with these sorts of stories at all? I don't know. My guess is he's going to tell us there is no magic wand, because I don't think there is. But there might be some opinions that he generally has, because he's always been an opinionated guy. Now that he's retired, I think he feels a little freer to do that as well. So we'll chat with the former chief, St. Cloud, all sorts of Twin Cities law enforcement experience as well when we come.
Talk about stepping up. Bang! Bang!
It's time to level up your game. Introducing the all-new ESPN app. All of ESPN, all in one place. Your home for the most live sports and the best championship moments.
The electricity is palpable.
Step up your game with no annual contract required. It's the ultimate fan experience. Level up for more on the ESPN app or at stream.espn.com. Sign up now.
This is Rob Gronkowski from Dudes on Dudes. Anyone else feeling hungry? Because Applebee's just cooked up the ultimate option play with their new Ultimate Trio deal. You can choose from 3 of their delicious appetizers and pair them up with 3 sauces for just $14.99. Craft your perfect trio from over 80,000 different combinations in this flavor-packed plate built for one, or to share if you're generous. You can stick with the classic pairings like boneless wings and buffalo sauce, mozzarella sticks and marinara, or brew pub pretzels and white cheddar beer cheese. Or you can spice things up and try some unexpected combinations like dipping chicken wonton tacos in their honey Dijon mustard. The choice is yours. The Ultimate Trio is the perfect way to hit all your cravings in one plate and turn appetizers into an entree. It's time to head to your neighborhood Applebee's or order online today. Now that's eating good in the neighborhood.
Life moves fast. A new home, a new baby, a new chapter. But without an estate plan, your future's still vulnerable. With Trust and Will, you can name guardians, start a trust, create healthcare directives, and more. All online in about an hour. It's attorney designed, state specific, and built to protect what you love. Plans start at just $199, and every plan is safe, secure, and kept completely private. From families with young kids to adults caring for aging parents, Trust and Will makes it simple to take control, without a law office, paperwork stress, or court delays. Go to trustandwill.com and use code RADIO to save 20%. Start your plan today. Don't wait for life to force your hand. Estate planning is one of the smartest, most loving things you can do. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
Trust and Will.
Well, it's not the common man, Dan Cole. He is wrapped up. He did go a little later just so we could continue to run the afternoon press conference on the tragedy at hand. Barrero and Guardsy back with you. We'll be here until 6:30 this evening, and we're now, well, we're not pleased under these conditions, but we are, actually, Guardsy, will you pot him up? I'm too far away from my phone. I didn't move the phone over. And we'll say hello to former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson. Chief, you got us okay?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, and I appreciate the extra time today. We're hoping to still spend some time together at the State Fair on Sunday, reminding folks that we were intending to be there today. Chose to come back to the studio for reasons I think that should be pretty obvious, not the least of which we're going to be doing a lot of phone interviews. That gets really funky with the speaker system. And it was going to change what took place this morning, obviously changed the tone of the conversation. We always welcome your thoughts at a time like this. And I said this much earlier, and I think you said this before too, that maybe it's a side point, maybe it's a secondary point, but I do think we've got to stop in this community patting ourselves on the back that, stuff like that stuff happens other places. It never would happen here. We're different. We're wired different. We're better, whatever the case may be. Can we now officially say, especially after this summer, that we got to get rid of that and stop pretending that we're better than anybody else, because we're enduring, not only are we enduring some of the same problems, you could argue we're enduring some of the worst tragedies, starting with the political assassination not that long ago, and even what we encountered this morning in South Minneapolis.
Agreed, Dan, and it's always been something that has... Boy, I'm searching for words today because my heart is heavy and my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of everybody involved. The two babies who died and all the other kids and the residual effects that they have to go through for the rest of their lives. But yeah, Dan, it's my point is I've always said wherever there's people, things like this potentially could happen. And so we're naive when we think that, oh, well, this is Minneapolis or this is a suburb or whatever, that's not going to happen. And history continues to prove that that's not the case.
Sad, but very true. So where were you when you first heard about this? What were your first thoughts as you gathered more information?
Heartbreak, because as you know, my wife owns a daycare center, and it was not far from there. And I actually got a call from her because they had to go on lockdown because they were in such close proximity. And she asked me to turn the TV on and see what was going on because they were reading it, live streaming from the Star Tribune or what have you. And I turned on the TV, and it's just heartbreak all over again, like every other shooting tragedy, mass casualty that we've all had to bear witness to since Columbine. And it's just, Dan, my goodness, you can't send your babies to school to go and pray in church without getting shot. We're in big trouble, man.
Yeah.
We're in big trouble.
Yeah, and, I mentioned earlier that at times like these, we're all looking for the magic elixir, right? We're looking for the magic wand that can, if not eliminate these sorts of tragedies, lessen them. And often we do that, Chief, before we have any details about what motivated this person individually, a number of other things as well. I understand the human reaction to that. I've tended to think over the years, and maybe this is not very popular, is that it's always been a combo platter. It's more nuanced than saying ban all guns, or more nuanced than saying we got to do a better job and spend more money on mental illness and have greater, I guess you could say, awareness of individuals in the community who might be prone to sort of this sort of behavior. I've always felt it's a little of everything. But I think we get so paralyzed politically by any of the individual possibilities that we end up just sort of shaking our heads and saying, well, we're going to be in this exact same place in 2 weeks or 2 months.
And that's the sad part, isn't it, Dan? Because you and I grew up in a different era, and the one thing we didn't have to worry about, I mean, we had to worry about bullies in high school, yes, but not getting shot.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We didn't, and I agree with you. It's a combo platter in that I don't want to take away people's Second Amendment rights and their ability to own firearms. And I'm a police officer, and I am not, how do I say this, Dan? I'm not a firearms aficionado, right, but I do have some, obviously, given my profession. But the older I get, the more you start to ask yourself questions like, what does the average citizen need a semi-automatic weapon for?
Mm-hmm.
And then that draws the ire from people who think you're trying to take away their Second Amendment rights. And I'm not, but what do you need that for? It's an assault rifle. It has one purpose, and I'm prior military, and so I get it for that. But for the average citizen, sometimes, Dan, just because you can doesn't mean you should,
mm-hmm,
right?
Right. Very true. And in terms of do you think I don't disagree with you, but there's no real feeling that there's any political will that's going to get something like that done, is there?
Oh, good God, no, Dan. There isn't. I was talking about this earlier with my wife. We had a gun summit here 10, 15 years ago when Milwaukee was just on fire, kind of like Minneapolis is right now. And one of the things I learned was something called the T-Hart Amendment. I had never heard of it, Dan. And it was a rider on a bill in Congress that precluded federal officers from sharing information with local law enforcement about who purchases weapons and what kinds of weapons. And I remember saying then, 15, 20 years ago, that's where we need to start, because why in the world would we preclude law enforcement agencies from sharing that kind of information with one another so that we can keep an eye on people,
yes, right,
who are purchasing these kinds of weapons that perhaps shouldn't be able to. But then you draw the ire of the Second Amendment crowd. And what's frustrating, Dan, is that they leave out the rest of that clause. And I can't quote it chapter and verse. However, I can quote this part. you are able to bear arms against a militia that's formed to overthrow your government, and I'm paraphrasing that. However, that doesn't mean that everybody should just be able to go out and buy semi-automatic weapons for pleasure or for sport. And I know I'm going to get into trouble for that, but I don't care anymore. I'm getting cynical. I'm more cynical now than I was when I was a police officer, Dan, because this mayhem is just incomprehensible. And what are we going to do? I wish I had the answer. I'd give it away for free.
What is your answer to one of the things we tend to hear at a time like this, and I've already heard it from a number of places, is that we all know the statistics, right? There's more guns in America than there are people. I don't know what the latest numbers are. It's obscene. You probably have a better idea because you had to be directly involved and this was part of your job. But the only answer for this, as sick as it sounds, is more guns. Well, if places like this church, this school didn't have signs that said we ban guns from the premises, then maybe, first of all, the bad guys aren't as motivated to assume that they're going to a place where they're not going to deal with any kind of resistance. And secondly, that if everybody was packing heat at the school, there's a better chance that maybe they could have limited the damage, whatever. I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times when you were a chief. What do you say to that argument?
I would say, and I'm not being facetious, that it lends some credence to the mentality in places like Texas, where everybody can pack some heat and perhaps thwart some of these kinds of attacks. But at the end of the day, those signs that say, we ban guns, you're not allowed to have guns, are about as useless as, unfortunately, a woman in a domestic violence situation who gets a restraining order.
Right.
It's useless.
Yeah.
It's a piece of paper. And unless you can get compliance from everybody who wants to be civil, doesn't make any difference, Dan.
Just doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. Yeah. And that's the sad reality.
There's also a lot of let's broaden this out first, because I'm looking at a headline, and you know this all too well. This was, what's the date today? This is from yesterday. Star Tribune headline. Gunman kills one, wounds 6 others in daylight barrage on Minneapolis Street. The 30 rounds fired from a high-velocity gun likened to a weapon of war erupted near Lake Street on the city's south side. Now, I think in this case, the belief is this was a targeted occasion for whatever that's worth. But I mean, there's another weekend in Chicago. I was at 30. Was it 80 shot, 22 killed? I don't even remember what the numbers are. There have been some weekends in the summer in Chicago that just blow your mind on what happens. So again, there's a lot of different sorts of violence that I think indicate there's not all one answer to it. But I do think, sadly, we do not spend enough time. You and I have talked about this for years, about that sort of violence that, may not necessarily always be viewed as a mass shooting. But even if it's 1 or 2 people at a time in many of our cities over and over and over again, it's also needs to be addressed, I think, every bit as much as this more sensational kind of story that ends up being covered by the entire country.
And ironically, Dan, that was the precise, what's the word I'm looking for, Dan? That was the precise reason why the gun summit was held here before.
Right.
Because things were happening in Milwaukee, Chicago. You're a native of that area, just like I am from a big city. And what we were trying to do was to get the world, the country, our elected officials to recognize this as a public health issue and not just a violence issue, so that perhaps we could put some more resources toward it. Unfortunately, to your point, these things go on all day, every weekend in Chicago. Pick up the paper. There's 80 shot every weekend in Chicago.
That's right.
Or Baltimore. But here's what is not the answer. Arming the National Guard and putting them in these kinds of cities. We've got to find another comprehensive way to deal with the core issues. And it sounds corny, sounds crazy, but we have to find a comprehensive way to deal with the reasons why these things are happening. And we can talk about it ad nauseum, but we know. And I don't want to minimize what's happened today, but Dan, where are these people's parents? We've had this is the third or fourth shooting in 24 hours that ended in a fatality in Minneapolis.
Right.
The third or fourth. And I would bet you a week's pay that none of the shooters were over the age of 23 or 24 years old.
Right.
And so that gets us back to who's raising these people and how.
Well,
and,
this has gotten you
a little consolation for the family.
Right.
But
That's true.
It's the truth.
Well, and this has gotten you into trouble before. This is why we love having you on, because some of the comments you've already made have a number of lefties bitter regarding more, a better use of gun control. And yet in this case, you're probably annoying people on the left side of the aisle by bringing up something that actually, as you know, has gotten some individuals across the country in trouble. Some executives were in trouble for pretty much saying the same thing you do. And I like that you try to bring common sense to all of this discussion, and not play the game of, well, who am I going to annoy, or what team do I have to play on here? Because again, it's a combo platter. I'll give you another example. I just heard the mayor of Chicago was interviewed on Morning Joe the other day. And it's a perfect illustration, I think, of why we're screwed. Morning Joe guy says, hey, look, earlier there was a lot of talk about programs, ways to try to get at the root cause of what ends up terrorizing individuals in many city communities, right? And that's maybe more money into programs, other options beyond just spending time on the streets. And as Morning Joe said, couldn't agree more, Mayor. But what do you also think about, what do you think another, I don't know if the number was 500 more, maybe he said 5,000 more police officers in Chicago would be? And you know what the mayor did with it? He ran from it. Well, that's not what we need to talk about today. And Joe tried 5 times to say, I'm not disagreeing with you about the front end of this, but don't we need a little of everything? And wouldn't that also potentially lead to greater safety? And because of the politics of it, the mayor would never really go down that road. He could not go down that road. And so you end up on these two sides, like there's never a possibility of a gray area where, well, we actually need both, right? We need better programs. We need more money to finance those programs and to supervise those programs that can be helpful and have been helpful in some cities. And chances are in a city like Chicago, certainly Minneapolis, we need more responsible cops. Why is that so hard to say both at the same time?
Dan, I need an easier question, but I'm going to try and answer it. I think it's because some of our elected officials throughout the country don't consider police officers as a viable resource to kind of thwart or be proactive so that these kinds of things doesn't happen, even though there are places that have proven that, you know what, I'm with you, man. 500 more cops, absolutely. You know why? Because things don't tend to happen, nefarious things anyway, where the police are. And if you have enough people that you can deploy, you got a much better chance of not having nefarious things happen. Now, we can't be everywhere all the time.
Right.
However, the more resources you can deploy, the more area you can cover, and the more things that you can be proactive about and kind of thwart before they happen. And sadly, some of our elected officials just don't get that.
No.
And it's sad, and it's what keeps us in this predicament that we're in my opinion.
So let's finish up with a little bit about red flag laws, because that always comes up, whether it would have had any impact. And that's always my hesitation in bringing up any of these subjects, as if we know enough already in this case that might have changed everything. Because the truth is we don't know enough yet to know. I think we still should have these conversations all of the time, because there is research to indicate, as you say, how many times are we running into situations where parents did seem to have an inkling and either didn't know what to do or too intimidated to do anything. But as I understand it on the red flag law stuff, I'm sure you had a lot of experience with this. That too is tricky in terms of how you implement it, because historically in this country, we want the standard to be pretty high before we say we're going to take whatever you have away or put you away. So what was your experience in that regard? Should that also be part of this discussion?
It should be, Dan, and you're spot on, because believe it or not, and I'm sure you know, you've done your homework, it takes an act of Congress to get someone that is on the verge of coming undone and perhaps doing something like what happened today. It takes an act of Congress to get those people even evaluated, let alone committed. And I've seen that throughout my career when I worked for the county at the sheriff's office. And I'm sorry, 2 and 2 is 4, right. And you can see that, this person is really close to exploding and doing something very, very bad to a lot of other innocent people. But because we are who we are in America and everybody has their rights, it takes a lot to get someone evaluated and then committed. And so until we address those kinds of things in a comprehensive way, right, and get to the core of this is going to keep happening. And that's the saddest part, in this guy's opinion, because I don't want to go, I don't want the pendulum to swing all the way to the other end, sure, because somebody says, oh my God, I think this person is having a mental health breakdown or whatever, let's commit them. Yep. No. Yep. But we have to find a happy medium.
Chief,
we haven't.
Let me get your reaction to a text that came in. This is from Shane out of looks like Shakopee. More cops, but no National Guard. Would you ask the chief to please elaborate on the difference?
The difference is we do not want to start militarizing our country, right, by placing uniformed National Guard military troops on our streets. And here's the example I'll give them. When a disaster happens, a natural disaster, the edict is all problems like this are local. And so the federal government is going to let the local government handle them until they can, and they ask for assistance. That is not the case with what I am seeing going on right now. And so, yep, more cops, absolutely. I'm all for more cops. I'm for more good cops on the street so that everybody knows and feels safe that, boy, I can go downtown to 8th and Hennepin and not worry about getting shot. I can send my kids to school because there's a presence. And that is on our use of force continuum. The very first thing on it, Dan, is presence. If people see you, they're less likely to do something nefarious. And I can't stress that point enough. Yep. And so, yeah, no, we don't need to start with National Guard troops on our streets. That's a really bad precedent, and I don't like it.
Well, isn't part of it, too, is what they're trained to do is supposed to be very different, right? I mean, they can't possibly be prepared for everything just being thrown into a community.
Correct, Dan, because guess what they don't have? They don't have knowledge of local laws and city ordinances and state laws. And as a person who spent 8 years in the military, you're right. It's a very, very different dynamic with respect to what it is you're asked to do. And, okay, Dan, I hate to go here, but history has taught us when we militarize and start putting military folks on our streets, that never ends well. It just doesn't. Let it be a local issue, and let's handle it at a local level until such time as it's so out of hand, like the riots after George Floyd. Yep, we needed military help.
Right, correct.
But we don't need them day to day. We can figure this out.
I hope you're right. Chief, we appreciate you as always, and we'll see you on Sunday at the fair.
Absolutely. All
Thanks,
right,
sir.
sir. Have a good day.
Appreciate you. Would you put the chief back on hold for me? Because, again, the phone's a little bit too far away for me to reach with my headset. Former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson with tons of experience, not just in St. Cloud, but in the metro area as well when it comes to law enforcement. And he is going to join us on Sunday. The plan is to return to the fair tomorrow for a 2-hour show. A couple people texted already asking whether Patrick Royce is going to be on the show today as was originally planned. The answer is no. We've changed the schedule for the obvious reasons. Same with Niko Medved. He was going to join from the fair as well to talk Golden Gopher men's basketball. That, unfortunately, is now postponed. I don't know. I'm sure there'll be a second shot somewhere down the road, but probably not at the fair because our regular fair lineup has been changed for all the obvious reasons today. Let's make this the top of the hour break. As I mentioned, Lou Ragoose is going to join us at some point today. KARE 11 reporter.
Right around 5:15.
5:15.
After his 5:10 or so live hit, he'll join at 5:15.
Excellent. So that's coming up in a bit. Lots of. I'm not going to get. How can I say this artfully? I'm going to try not to rise to the bait regarding a lot of folks on the text line. So what I am going to say, though, is not directed at any one individual who seems to be so angry, but more generally, the philosophy we like to adopt on this show. And we'll explain precisely why we think that philosophy is especially important on day one, the first day. We'll kind of try to flesh that out a little bit and remind folks that in the world of Sharks and Jets, there is one immutable rule and law, and we're seeing it. I'm seeing it play out directly right in front of me via the text line. Stay tuned.
This is Rob Gronkowski from Dudes on Dudes. Applebee's just cooked up the ultimate option play with their new Ultimate Trio deal. You can choose from 3 of their delicious appetizers and pair them up with 3 sauces for just $14.99. Craft your perfect trio from over 80,000 different combinations in this flavor-packed plate built for one, or to share if you're generous. You can stick with the classic pairings like boneless wings and buffalo sauce, or you can spice things up and try some unexpected pairings like dipping chicken wonton tacos in our honey Dijon mustard. It's time to head to your neighborhood Applebee's or order online today. Now that's eating good in the neighborhood.